Welcome to the BF Anderson Technical Report for July the 28th. Let's get right into the charts. We're starting to see some volatility yesterday, mainly due to earnings season. A lot of companies are reporting earnings. Remember, earnings are like a report card. It's how are these companies doing? How are corporate earnings doing? So let's look at these indexes just to see what the market's trying to tell us. Now, one thing I did want to kind of educate a little bit on is the concept of what we call white space. A lot of times an index or a stock price will get extended above the moving average, and you get an area in here called white space. And a normal pullback, into the moving average is a good thing. Now remember, what we're doing here is what we call trend following, which is, if you have an uptrend, it's where, the index hits a high, then it pulls down and makes a low, then it makes a higher high, then it makes a lower, higher low, higher high, higher low. So with the NASDAQ, which this is the index we're looking at, the index made an all-time new high yesterday, but then pulled back in a correction, filling in some of the white space. Looks fairly normal. Now here are the mid-cap stocks. These are the middle-sized companies. Again, the moving averages are moving up. We're in an uptrend here. We're above the moving averages. We did get the pullback that we had yesterday in the index. However, I still think it looks fine. Now here's the New York Composite. These are all the stocks on the New York Stock Exchange. Actually looks pretty good. Now this would have a lot of banks and a lot of oil stocks in this index. And as you can see, just like the other indexes, the moving averages are in an uptrend and the price looks good. Now we get to the small caps. This has been a pretty interesting area to follow. Not as much white space. Did get a breakout to new highs. However, we're getting somewhat of a pullback in the small caps. Now remember, usually the generals lead and then the troops will follow. So the big stocks are going to be the first ones out the gate, and then the small caps will start to come on. Now here's the S&P 500. Large companies, a lot of technology and so forth. Some white space. We did get a pullback, but then it pulled right back into the base here, and the moving averages look the same. Now, I did want to point out one area that is really perking up, which is China. This is the PowerShares Golden Dragon portfolio. This is a portfolio of Chinese stocks that trade here in the United States, which are referred to as American Depository Receipts. These companies, if they are to trade in our country, have to meet all the accounting standards that are set by the SEC. So it's a pretty good way to monitor the really good companies that are in China. Now you can see here a lot of white space. The moving averages have turned positive in a very strong uptrend. Now you have to realize here, China is the fastest growing economy. Their middle class is growing rapidly. In fact, the estimates are that the middle class in China will double by 2020. Big opportunity. So here is the watch list. Now remember, the watch list is a watch list. The main purpose of the watch list is to identify where the strength in the market is. What we do here is we're basically using relative strength studies. In other words, which stocks are relatively stronger out there than the rest of the market. And you look for patterns. So the first thing I would point out here is Alibaba. First thing I know about that is it's the Amazon of China. And Amazon, Alibaba, eBay, whatever. This is all about electronic commerce. E-commerce is definitely taking center stage in the marketplace. So you can see here Alibaba in a very strong uptrend, just like the Chinese index that I showed you earlier. Here is another Chinese e-tailer, a company called JD.com. They have over 250 million active users. You can see here the stock broke out in a very meaningful way, had somewhat of a pullback yesterday, but like I say, e-commerce, China. Here is a biotech. Now the biotech stocks have been strong lately, especially Vertex Pharmaceuticals. The thing about the biotechs that I know is that's a risky area, and it kind of tells me that investors are now starting to take on more risk, which is somewhat bullish. Now here's Vertex. Now Vertex did have a pullback after a major announcement of a trial for one of their drugs, and it has been incredibly strong. So again, another biotech. Then we go to the last stock on the list, which is a company called Wayfair. Now, Wayfair is, again, e-commerce, but having to do with furnishings, home furnishings, and the company is doing quite well. So we're seeing a market where we're getting a little bit of volatility in here with the earnings season, but we feel like earnings are on track and things look pretty good. Let me know if you have any questions.